Hello and welcome to Etiquette Conversations with EFI and Shirley, where we redefine modern etiquette one conversation at a time. With me is my co host.
Shirley Shalaby. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Effie, for this introduction. Indeed, we are ready.
Wow, Shirley, today it's a wonderful day because we're continuing the conversation on multicultural etiquette in a globalized world. But today, as you're aware, and our audience, as we announced, we're dealing with cultural sensitivity and intelligence in a multicultural world. Now, to truly master multicultural etiquette, we must develop cultural sensitivity because cultural sensitivity goes beyond just knowing the rules of etiquette, the do's, the don'ts. It's about cultivating a pattern of awareness, of respect for the unique values and traditions of others, and worldwide views of others. Cultural sensitivity allows us to approach differences with humility, curiosity, and grace, ensuring our interactions build trust and connections rather than discomfort or offense is very important. And at this time, I invite my veteran good friend Shirley to talk to us about cultural sensitivity and intelligence. Listen carefully and attentively. You're going to learn a lot through this session. Welcome, Shirley.
Welcome, dear. Thank you very much for this introduction. Yes, one more time in my favorite subject. I call it the symphony of intercultural etiquette. It is indeed music to my ears.
Mm,
Today, I will talk about a new subject related to intercultural etiquette, which is going to
mm,
be the part two of last episode.
mm.
For those who were not with us last week, do watch the last episode, although I had internet trouble, but that's okay. And then you can continue with us today. Of course, we know that intercultural etiquette gives us the tools to handle interconnectedness with the world. And those tools open the doors to more communication, more exposure to the world, and more knowledge globally. But indeed, they make our life very colorful, and yet there are challenges. Still challenges. And this is going to be the subject of today as part two of our intercultural etiquette. What is that subject? I'm I'd like to talk about cultural intelligence, which is represented by CQ, if you want to Google it. And it is our communication signals that are willing to accept left and right and to elevate us to another level. Cultural intelligence helps us adapt to the entire world, gives us the tools to understand other cultures and other languages and other countries and make us become part of them while keeping our individuality and our authenticity. We orchestrate something new that's called experience of life, of global life. I selected and of course, as an objective for cultural intelligence, the objective is to add to our adaptability to the world, is to add to our sensitivity with other cultures. Today, I've selected three major components to the cultural intelligence, which I think they are really major. The first component being the cognitive component. Cognitive is knowledge, cognitive is information. So before any individual gets a chance to go visit another country or will have to do through his job with another country, please read about it. Develop this knowledge through reading, documenting yourself about this country, knowing about the people, knowing about the population, knowing about the customs of the people, knowing about the food, the literature, the habits, maybe the body language, the idioms, in talking, the jokes. Any knowledge is power being documented. And then nowadays with internet, the knowledge is around us everywhere. So I do encourage students who would have to travel and go for summer training, or student or newly graduate students who are having a job in another country, do develop your cognitive signals by reading and documenting. Knowledge is power. The second component, which is not less important, it is the emotional component. Are you charming or are you not? This is it. Working on one's feelings, uh, developing the authentic etiquette spirit while dealing with people from other cultures. Meaning what? Accepting them, uh, dealing with them with empathy, sympathizing with them, talking with a smile. Positive brings positive. Just start with this attitude. Keep your individuality. Keep the authenticity of your country. This is definitely power to you, but indeed, develop friendship authentically. Try to do that. And then it will elevate you to another level. So, that spirit or this emotional part is very, very major. As a consequence to the first two components, the cognitive and the emotional, definitely the third one is the behavioral component. Meaning what? Once I do my homework with the first two components, definitely it would affect my behavior. It
Mhm.
would affect my body language in order to be less shocking to other people. It would affect my mannerism. It would give me this kind of friendship. I'm willing to change, to modify a little bit of my habits in order to deal with people and to handle and to cope with people or individuals from other cultures with love, with friendliness. Definitely, the behavioral would force you to work on your smile, because smile, as we always said, is power. Start with a smile. Indeed, you will receive smile. So these three components, we can elaborate on them practically later on, but they are very major. There are tools to help these components. And also, I would advise students or viewers to develop those tools. The first one, after a sip of coffee, is an extra language. I believe in being bilingual. Those who have a chance, if you are bilingual, you have a bigger audience. If you are bilingual, you understand people more. You have a chance to say jokes and to make them like you. Bilingual or language proficiency is power to you. You visit a country, you have the language of this country, you can learn more about the art of the country, the films, the actors, um, everything. You are immersed in the country. If you cannot have the language of the country, there are languages that I call international languages. You could have one of those international languages in your part of your knowledge. Those languages, international languages, are accepted everywhere. So, language is definitely power, and you have a bigger audience. You can talk to more people and you feel comfortable. Once you are comfortable with yourself, it shows on you and it makes you, and then you take the focus off yourself and you have time to think of being kind to others. Communication is kindness, and communication is what we need everywhere, even in trade. Now everything is communication first, intercultural, multicultural, or global. Very, very important. um, I like to say something and then go back to you, Effie. Sometimes those are the positive skills that we need. Some skills could be negative. So I need to warn my students about those negative skills, like going For instance, going to visit a new country and having a preconceived idea. Oh, my culture is more, my culture is better or is superior. And then going with generalization and putting everybody in one block. This is wrong. So definitely, we like to elaborate on the positive, not the negative. And back to you, Effie.
Oh, thank you very much. Shirley, there's something you said that I got, and I think, I mean, taking it from that context, it was so nice when you talked about
Which
the
one?
cognitive components, the emotional components, and then the behavioral component. I really like the way,
Sorry.
the view with which you brought this. Now, in talking about, I'm focusing today on cultural sensitivity.
Mhm.
um, we have to understand what cultural sensitivity is.
Yes,
It is
please.
actually rooted in empathy. It's the ability to recognize that people's behavior and traditions are shaped by their cultural backgrounds. We must also realize that what feels comfortable to you might feel foreign to the other person or to
Mhm.
someone else. Now, respecting these differences doesn't mean you agree to them or you're adopting them. It just means that you're acknowledging their validity, that these things exist where you do not exist. And so now let's pause for a second and think about this. Let's consider these examples. In some cultures, a firm handshake conveys confidence. However, in some Middle Eastern countries, like yours, a soft handshake might just seem more respectful, especially when you're dealing with the opposite gender. If you misinterpret this as lack of assertiveness, you would risk projecting your cultural bias. What about personal space? In
Yeah.
Latin America or Middle Eastern cultures, people often stand closer when they are conversing, signaling warmth and friendliness. In Nordic countries, however, like Sweden and Finland, this same proximity might seem invasive. Cultural sensitivity helps you read these non-verbal cues and respond appropriately. Now that we have understood this, let's talk about our why. Because for everything, you need to start with your why. It gives you purpose, it gives you focus. Why
Ah,
cultural sensitivity? Cultural sensitivity is really more than a skill. Excuse me. It's a mindset that has ripple effects across
yeah.
relationships, community, and even economies. It
Mhm.
strengthens relationship because respecting someone's culture shows that you value them as a person. And what does it do? It fosters trust and collaboration. Also, it reduces conflicts. Misunderstandings are the root of many conflicts. Sensitivity minimizes the chances of offending others unintentionally.
Mhm.
Again, it enriches your experience. Engaging with different cultures broadens your worldview. It enhances personal growth and makes these interactions more meaningful.
Yeah.
Again, I bring us back to when I served my country in another area in the northern part of Nigeria. Those experiences that I gained, even if it's over 25 years now, um, those almost 30 years, it's the experiences that I cannot, they are invaluable, they are so valuable to me, those experiences. So every time you engage in different cultures, it broadens your view. There were so many things I didn't know that I now know. And it also it creates opportunities. And again, referring to that, the opportunities that 1 year created for me, I am still drawing on them up to date. Cultural
Absolutely.
sensitivity can be the difference between sealing a deal or losing that deal. Now, I'm also going to talk about the pillars of cultural sensitivity. There are four pillars of cultural sensitivity.
Aha.
One is acknowledging your implicit bias. We
Yeah.
all have biases. We all have biases. Subconscious preferences, they are shaped by our upbringing, they are shaped by experiences. Cultural sensitivity requires us to challenge these biases and approach others with an open mind. For example, if you assume punctuality equals professionalism, you might
Uh-huh.
misjudge someone coming from a culture where flexibility with time reflects relationship prioritization. Ask yourself, am I viewing this through the lens of my own culture? This simple question can transform your perspective. Now, secondly, active listening. In
Yeah.
multicultural interactions, active listening becomes critical. Here's how you practice it. Focus on understanding the why rather than responding. You want to
Hmm.
avoid interruptions. Even if the speaker's pace or style differs from what you're used to, be attentive to tone, be attentive to word choice, be attentive to context.
Yeah.
For instance, in East Asian cultures, people might seem indirect to avoid confrontation or to cause embarrassment. Now, if someone says something like, it's a bit difficult,
Yeah.
now they could be saying no without wanting to use the word no. So you
Hmm.
want to listen for the nuances that can help you interpret their true intent. Thirdly, the third pillar, you want to embrace cultural humility. Like you said earlier, no culture is superior to the other. Cultural humility means admitting that you also don't know everything about another culture, and that
Absolutely. Yeah.
what seems foreign to you might sit home with some other people, and it's okay. It's better to ask than to assume. Now,
Mm.
if you're offered food you do not recognize, you can just say, can you tell me more about this dish, instead of hesitating or
Of
declining outright.
course.
If you're also unsure about greeting, you can just ask, what's the best way to greet in your culture? These small acts of curiosity shows respect and willingness to learn, and that you appreciate them. And then finally, the fourth pillar, adapting without losing your authenticity. Cultural sensitivity doesn't mean you're abandoning your identity.
Oh, yes.
It's about finding ways to align your values with respect for others. For instance, if you're a vegetarian or dining in a culture where meat is a staple, express gratitude for their hospitality and explain politely your dietary differences and preference. Most people will appreciate your honesty as long as it is expressed respectfully. Being
Absolutely.
culturally sensitive is about risking a balance between honoring others and staying true to yourself. These are the four pillars of cultural sensitivity.
Beautiful.
And to take us further, I want us to, and if you want to add to what I have said, Shirley, then we go into practical examples of cultural like sensitivity in different contexts. We're going
Exactly.
to take it to business, to social gathering, and we'll go further.
Exactly. It's
Yes.
beautiful what you said, and it's exactly what I would have said. I will present it in another way. Maybe, as you said, um, it takes energy to make the effort and engage with people and show them that I like you and I like them and I'd like to learn, rather than say, oh no, I don't like it. The
Mhm.
no is not to be used. And nowadays, because of globalization and because of fast communication and fast travels and very strong interconnectedness, there is something new, a kind of fusion of behavior. Like when we go to restaurants, and some restaurants are Vietnamese, some restaurants are Polynesian, some are Chinese, and some are fusion, which I could never understand, but like fusion between everything, all the dishes. Indeed, behavioral, the behavioral component should go through this fusion of keeping my identity, keeping my authenticity, and yet immerse into the culture that is receiving me now, and then
Mm,
create a kind of fusion that is so charming. In
mm,
my industry as an image consultant, the the target of any behavior is to reach beauty, beauty of behavior, and charm, beyond charm of behavior.
mhm.
And you reach all that through the fusion of behavior, through being flexible, and through being um, loving and positive. So, indeed, respect others and learn. Of course, if it's some new behavior that is remote to us, we shouldn't shy out. We should just learn and ask questions. And as you said, Effie, the power of the smile is so important. And I add to it the tone of your voice. When you ask a question with energy and positivity, they would answer with energy and positivity, and they will not feel hurt or insulted. It all depends on the way you ask the question. Thank you,
Wow.
Effie. That was interesting what you said.
Thank you so much. And now I'm going to speak more on practical examples of cultural sensitivity in
Okay.
different contexts. Now, in business, and I want you to add to this because I know you like to talk about the corporate world. In business, cultural norms in business settings greatly vary. And understanding these differences can ensure productive and respectful interactions. Example: in the Middle East, avoid showing your shoes when seated. It is considered disrespectful. Now, when Shirley comes, Shirley is going to talk to us about how women sit and how men should sit if you have to cross your legs. In Japan, for example, allow your host to set the pace during negotiations. Don't rush to close a deal. Building trust takes precedence in Japan.
Yeah.
And in business meetings and negotiations in the Middle East, meetings often begin with personal discussions about family and well being before addressing business. Jumping straight to the agenda might seem impersonal. Now, your strategy in dealing with the Middle Eastern people in business is build rapport by engaging in polite small talk, demonstrate genuine interest in their culture and traditions. What about East Asia? Like I said, in China, Japan, and Korea. In presenting a business card with one hand and failing to examine it carefully after receiving it might be considered disrespectful. What's your strategy with that? Present it and receive business cards with both hands. Um, Take a moment to study the card and store it respectfully and in a lovely way. You want to just avoid putting it in your pocket immediately after you receive it. You accept it, you look at it, you admire something, and then you put it in a lovely way, saying something that I'm going to get back to you. And in Western cultures, Germans value punctuality. Arriving late to a meeting may harm your credibility. If you're
Wow.
arriving late, your strategy plan to arrive at least 5 minutes early. Confirm meeting times to account for local perceptions of time. And if you're running late, please do well to call or send a message to say you are
Yeah.
running late. I go to social gatherings, cultural sensitivity in social settings, especially when attending celebrations or personal events. In Latin America, declining food or drinking at a gathering might be perceived as rude. What's your strategy? Accept food when offered, even if it's in small quantities. Express gratitude enthusiastically to show your appreciation. What about in South Korea? Refusing a drink poured out by an elder or a senior can be seen as disrespectful. What's your strategy here? Accept the drink graciously. If you don't wish to consume alcohol, politely explain your reason after the first toast. In Nigeria, for example, greeting is very important. Greeting someone in the room upon everyone in the room upon arrival is a sign of respect. Skipping this may seem disrespectful. And in Nigeria, when we greet elders, you greet them with your two hands and you make a slight bow.
Oh, no.
For the ladies sometimes you want to bend your knees a little bit. You come down a little bit
Oh,
to
lovely.
show respect for the person. And so these are things that we value. People expect you to greet them. Greeting is something that we value in Nigeria. And so if you're going to Nigeria, you need to put that into context that these people value
Love.
greeting, they value respectful behavior. And you want to, so take time to greet people, starting with the health elders or to the person of higher status. In Latin America, you want to accept invitations enthusiastically. In cultures like Brazil and Mexico, social events are warm, they are lively. So declining an invitation might seem like a lack of interest. In Europe, in Scandinavian countries, you want to avoid discussing personal topics like income or religion unless the other person brings it up. At this time, Shirley, I'd want to defer to you. You know, you're the veteran. As always, please talk about dining etiquette in um,
Of
multicultural
course,
etiquette with cultural sensitivity.
I agree with you. I mean, regional etiquette differs from one country to another because it's always the reflection of the heritage of the country, of the history of the country, of the customs. However, if we go back to corporate etiquette, there is a standard corporate etiquette that is the same globally. Otherwise, corporate relationship would get confused. They do respect sensitively each other's culture. However, there is a standard corporate etiquette that has to be followed in every conference, in every power lunch, which differs. Like the French, they don't believe in power lunch. They do meetings in the room and around the table. They just enjoy. Unlike the Americans, they do their deals at the table, and the British. These are slight differences. However, during a conference, the way to sit down is corporate and standard. When is it that we can cross legs or we don't? Is there a difference of genders? No. Corporate is genderless. You would like to be a gentleman and let the lady go first, that is just fine and always welcome. However, it is indeed genderless. It's based on hierarchy. The boss, who is the most important person, who can arrive the last one, who initiates his handshakes, not the others, who everybody is introduced to him or to her. So, again, as I said, genderless. So, corporate is standard and does not change with cultures, slightly, as much as we can. Yeah.
And wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And I want to speak again on religious or spiritual sensitivity.
Oh, lovely.
Respecting religious beliefs and practices is key to cultural sensitivity,
Oh, yes.
especially when traveling or interacting in diverse environments.
Hmm.
In India, when visiting temples, you want to remove your shoes and dress modestly. Be cautious about pointing your feet towards religious objects or individuals. In Africa, respect local spiritual practices and avoid dismissive language about indigenous beliefs, even if they
Ah.
differ from your own. In Middle East, during Ramadan, Muslims fast from dawn to sunset. Eating or drinking in public during this time might be considered disrespectful.
Hmm.
Your strategy again, be mindful of local practices and avoid public consumption of food or drinks during fasting season.
Hmm.
When I used to live in the northern part of Nigeria, it's very important how a lady dressed publicly.
Oh
And I know
yes,
that there were times I changed my dressing actually, because
yes,
I was going out there, and for me to gain acceptance, I needed to dress with the way the people dressed over there.
absolutely.
That was considered cultural sensitivity. In Southeast Asia, pointing your feet at a Buddha statue is considered disrespectful. So when you sit over there, you want to sit with your feet tucked in under you when visiting temples. Again, dress modestly, covering your shoulders and your knees. In the United States and Canada, where you have lived, religious diversity is broad. So
Absolutely.
assumptions about beliefs can be offensive. What's your strategy here? Avoid making generalizations. You mentioned this
Oh
earlier,
yes.
or imposing your beliefs. Instead, ask open minded questions like, how do you celebrate holidays in your community? Now, viewers, during the Christmas season, I and Shirley talked about a season of grace, don'ts and do's for those who are celebrating and those who are not celebrating. I think that's a good resource for all of us. I want to talk about communication style. Cultural sensitivity includes adapting your tone, your gestures, and your language to suit cultural differences. In France, for instance, interrupting someone mid conversation might be perceived as rude, as discussions are often viewed as intellectual exchanges. What's your strategy? If you're dealing with someone in France, wait for a natural pause before
Mhm.
contributing. Show an appreciation for nuanced, thoughtful dialogue. In sub Saharan Africa, direct contact, eye contact with an elder might seem a sign of disrespect, and it might look as if you are challenging them. What's your strategy if you're dealing with someone from sub Saharan Africa? It's adjust your eye level. You remember we talked about the thing from Allen Pease, where we talked about keep it
That
at the
triangle. Yeah.
Yes, keep it between the forehead and the left and the right shoulders. Yeah, Shirley is demonstrating it, so just learn. So observe local customs and mirror the behavior of those around you. In Japan, again, silence is valued as part of communication, indicating thoughtfulness or respect. Feeling every pause might come across as insensitive. Your strategy is embrace moments of silence in conversations. Value them. They often carry meaning and they allow for reflection. Shirley, earlier you talked about gender roles and expectations. Can you
Mm.
elaborate on this, please?
Um, as I said, in the corporate world, in the arena of work, it is supposed to be genderless, and it's just stop the behavior and wait lady against man. No, it's based on hierarchy, and it's still there. So it is indeed genderless. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Corporate etiquette.
Wow. So yes, just adding to what Shirley has said, gender norms differ significantly across cultures. And showing
No, not at
sensitivity
work.
to these differences can prevent missteps. In the Middle East,
Hmm.
in conservative societies, it may be inappropriate to shake hands with someone of the opposite gender unless they initiate it. Strategy.
In the corporate world,
Yes.
not really.
Yes, that's what we need to know, and that's what we are trying to let our audience know,
Mhm.
that in the corporate world,
Not really. This will halt the relationship. This could halt the advancement. I'm talking about corporate with a multinational company and having to. We cannot put all these obstacles. Well, that's what we said earlier about cultural sensitivity and cultural intelligence. So yes, indeed, no. Like for instance, in the Middle East, um, we respect. I mean, a lot of girls are veiled, and this is the modest fashion. If they work for a five-star hotel or a six-star hotel, indeed, the veiled girls, they cannot be at the reception, at the receiving line, you see, but they do have very important posts, but in the back area. So we really adapt. The corporate world is being adapted in every country.
Well,
That's what I mean, without hurting feelings.
that's why it's so important what we are doing, Shirley, because we are talking about cultural sensitivity and intelligence.
Mhm.
And here you talked about I took down that point, the cognitive component, where you have to have the knowledge and then the sensitivity, and then you know where to use it and where not to use it. So, strategy for dealing in the Middle East, in terms of cultural sensitivity, is you want to observe the body language of your counterpart. If unsure, offer a slight nod and a smile instead of extending your hand first.
Yeah,
In Scandinavian countries, as in Sweden, Finland, Norway, gender equality is a cornerstone of social interactions. You want to avoid assuming traditional gender roles or making gendered comments. Use inclusive language and avoid jokes or comments that reinforce
absolutely.
stereotypes.
Absolutely. Mhm.
Um, in terms of humor and sarcasm, humor can vary widely across cultures. And what is funny in one culture might offend in another. In the United Kingdom, for example, the British use dry humor or sarcasm, which might be misunderstood as serious criticism. Strategy: if you're unsure whether a comment is a joke, ask for clarification with curiosity rather than taking offense. So, Germans would prefer straightforward communication and may find excessive joking in professional settings unprofessional. Strategy: if you're dealing with a German, save your humor for informal settings and focus on clear, concise communication in business. And Shirley, I know this is your tough, you like it, so I'm going to ask you to speak about nonverbal communication, speak about this in the context of nonverbal communication. Over to you, Shirley.
All right, we can develop that subject more because this is such a dense subject. But offhand, non-verbal communication is what people see. They see you first through your non-verbal communication, and my God, as a cutthroat, they decide they like you or they don't
Mm-hmm.
like you. It has a very, according to Alan Pease, it has more than 55% of the effect. I mean, my judgment is based on what I see, and then the voice, verbal assertiveness, which is very important, is 38% of the impression, and quite important, but the body language is much more important at making people like me or not like me. And it has the handshake, the way we sit, the way we stand with energy, the way we open the door, enter a room, and produce a first impression, the way we walk, the way we wear the high heels. If you don't, we don't know how to wear high heels, do not wear them. So nonverbal is sending a lot of messages that are very, very important. Back to you.
Yes, we'll talk about another context, language barriers and multilingual sensitivity. Shirley had mentioned it um, earlier. Um, In France, for example, speaking English without first attempting French might be perceived rude in France. So you want to learn basic greetings as bonjour, merci. Even a little effort can go a long way. Shirley mentioned that earlier. In Nigeria, there's a local, a colloquial word we use. We say, how far? That's like, how are you? So we say, how far?
Oh,
So one of the ways you want to gain acceptance is by using that word, by saying, how far?
oh,
Yes,
nice. You
yes,
see,
how far?
when you have the
Yeah,
emotional
yes,
sensitivity,
yeah.
you learn.
So you just talked about emotional sensitivity, and
I just
it's so
learned it.
yes. So
Yeah.
your strategy is research regional languages and expressions. That's how far. It's a casual greeting that we all use. It fosters that I'm with you. That's what it's saying. So a little effort to incorporate local phrases can show respect and gratitude. In a global context, speak slowly and clearly. Avoid shouting. Use simple sentences. Avoid idioms. Be patient and encourage clarification without embarrassment. You really want to. So I'll just summarize by saying, what are actionable strategies for developing cultural sensitivity? Learn before you go to any area. Learn about the people, their culture, and their traditions, their taboos before traveling or engaging in a new culture. Especially in a globalized world, if you're having a meeting, try to know the people that will be in that meeting, and then know the people that you'll be dealing with, especially in negotiations. What are their biases? What are their traditions? What are their experiences? It would help you. Secondly, you want to adopt a non judgmental mindset. Avoid laboring practices as weird or wrong. Instead, see them as a difference and take the opportunity to understand their roots. Like Shirley said earlier,
Yeah.
ask respectful questions. When unsure, frame your questions with curiosity, and I'll ask Shirley to tell us how to ask questions with curiosity and respect. Could you tell me more about why this is important to your culture? Or be open for
Gosh,
feedback. If someone points out a cultural missteps, avoid or just apologize sincerely and make an effort to learn, and then practice flexibility. Be ready to adapt your behavior even if it feels unfamiliar or inconvenient. Adaptability signals your willingness to respect others. It still keeps you who you are. You are still your authenticity is still valid. You are just saying, I adapt to you. And Shelley, would you be kind enough to tell us how to ask respectful questions?
sorry.
Could you tell us how to ask respectful questions?
Uh, First of all, I think with asking respectful questions, work on the tone of your voice. It all
Mm-hmm.
depends if you say, would you tell me about this? Or may I ask, I'd like to know about this specific subject. It's the tone of the voice. A voice can be expressive and put everyone in a beautiful mood. And again, knowing the language would definitely help. If you don't know the
Wow.
language, so it's very hard. So tone of the voice, and could you tell me, or may I ask, like courtesy, using courtesy words rather than a blunt question, for
Wow.
sure. Rather than
It's
say no, this is wrong, you start by asking a question while maybe knowing the answer already, rather than saying a blunt no or I don't like it.
mm,
And not to say I, avoid the I, and then move to questions.
Thank you, Shirley.
You're the
Now,
most welcome.
in wrapping up, in the
Mhm.
end, cultural sensitivity and intelligence is an ongoing process. It's not just about perfection, it's about intentionality. The more we embrace differences and approach them with humility, the more we create spaces where people feel valued and respected. As global citizens, which we all become, this is
Absolutely.
how we build bridges that connects us across borders,
Mhm.
our beliefs and our boundaries. Cultural sensitivity and intelligence boils down to this: it is awareness, adaptability, and intentionality. By learning about and respecting the diverse traditions, behaviors, and values of others, we pave the way for meaningful, harmonious relationships across borders. Remember again, the key isn't to know everything, it's about remaining curious, open, and empathic. Treat others the way they want to be treated, not just the way you think is right. It's about prioritizing their comfort, their norms, and their humanity. Thank you for joining us on this seventh episode of Etiquette Conversations with Afi and Shirley. I tell you, it's been so wonderful. We love what we do. Join the conversation. You're going to be learning a lot. And I love having my veteran friend Shirley here. She's so
Same
good at
here.
what she does. And thank you, Shirley. Would you want to say what to our
Thank you, my
viewers?
dear. I would like to say if you have more questions, we appreciate your questions, and this is how we form our presentation. However, if there is another remote subject that you'd like to know about, we are here for you, and we enjoy that tremendously. I hope you do the same. Thank you, my Effie. Have a lovely
Thank
week.
you, everyone. See you. We're going to tell you when next, and you're going to see our post. Thank you for joining us. Bye for now.
Bye
Bye,
bye.
Shirley.
Bye, my dear.